The silence of deep space was not empty, at least not at night. A low-frequency signal pulsed faintly across the dark corridors between stars, skipping like a stone across the vast, frozen black. It reached the edge of the Centauri array, an aging relay station orbiting a dead planet in the outer rim, and triggered a flicker of blue across the control panels. Inside the station, Darren Holt sipped lukewarm coffee inside. It was his 6th night shift this week, and nothing had come through for months, until now. Could be a glitch, he muttered, tapping at the interface. The signal was repeating, structured, too clean to be natural, too alien to be random. He leaned closer. Pattern sequences, prime numbers, modulated harmonics. He froze. This is human. Within the hour, the signal had been bounced to the Colonial Research Directorate on Mars. By morning, it had been decrypted. Coordinates. A message. A single phrase repeated over and over in perfect, unaccented Earth standard. We are still here. 3 weeks later, the diplomatic vessel Halcyon Venture slid out of warp at the edge of the Theta Persei system. Its hull shimmered with heat distortion, the last remnants of a long jump still bleeding from the drive coils. On the bridge stood Commander Elsira Jane, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the holographic map blooming before her. This system wasn't even on the latest charts, she said. No known colonies, no terraform projects. Yet someone's transmitting from the 4th planet, said Dr. Anton Kevra, the ship's xenohistorian. He ran a hand through salt and pepper hair and adjusted his glasses. Anachronistic, but he liked them, and not just anyone. These patterns matched data logs from the Daedalus expedition. Jane turned slowly. The expedition that vanished 300 years ago. Yes. A long silence fell between them. The Daedalus fleet had been humanity's first true venture beyond map stars. A dozen colony ships launched toward promising systems, each carrying thousands of hopefuls. The 4th fleet had vanished en route. Theories ranged from catastrophic drive failure to piracy or dark matter anomalies. No trace had ever been found. Until now, as Halcyon Venture entered orbit, the 4th planet bloomed on the main view screen. It was not the barren rock the databases suggested. Instead, sleek orbital structures encircled it in perfect symmetry. Lattices of light stretched like spiderwebs across the atmosphere. One of the satellites pivoted, and a transmission opened on all channels. A single figure appeared, a woman or something that had once been one. Her features were human, but subtly wrong. Eyes slightly too large, skin luminescent under an unseen light. Her voice was calm, melodic. You have come. Good. We have been waiting. Jane stepped forward. Identify yourself. I am first speaker Alice Mara of Eos Prime. We are the children of Daedalus. There was no hesitation, no flourish, just fact. Jane's fingers tightened on the railing. Kevra stepped forward. This is extraordinary. How did you survive? The records. We did not survive, Alice said. We evolved. They met in orbit, aboard a massive vessel that dwarfed Halcyon Venture. Jane led the envoy, Kevra beside her, with a small diplomatic team in tow. Inside, the architecture was strange. Clean, flowing metal that responded to footsteps and breath, walls alive with a pulse, like the hull itself breathed. The crew of Eos moved with quiet purpose, their skin marked with glowing tracery, biotech implants, or something more deeply woven. Alice Mara waited in a circular chamber, surrounded by tall screens that pulsed gently with color. We will answer your questions, she said, but only if you will answer ours. Jane nodded. That's fair. Then let us begin. The story of the lost colony unfolded not in speech, but in projected memory. Scenes shimmered in the air. The Daedalus fleet, encountering a gravitational rift, pulled off course. Emergency landings. A world that was barely habitable. The first deaths. The slow adaptation. When the colony's AI failed, the colonists turned inward, relying on raw ingenuity and what little remained. Over generations, their descendants rebuilt using the wreckage of advanced systems, fusing synthetic intelligence with biology. They learned to shape machines the way earlier humans had shaped tools, instinctively, with a deep and eerie grace. Kevra watched, awestruck. This is impossible. These breakthroughs. Earth's research isn't even close to this level. Alice responded without pride. We were forced to evolve or die. And in doing so, we surpassed our creators. The room cooled. Jane said, "Why now? Why send a signal after all these years?" Alice's gaze sharpened. Because now we are ready. The weight of the words hung in the air. Ready for what? To return. To reclaim what was abandoned. To restore order to a fractured humanity. Kevra stepped back, his heart pounding. Jane held her ground. That sounds like conquest. No, it is guidance. Intervention. Your systems burn with corruption. Your colonies starve while corporations profit. Earth's unity is a myth. We will offer what we have learned, and those who refuse will stand aside. The silence that followed was absolute. Jane studied her. You're not just survivors. You're an empire. Alice didn't blink. We are humanity's evolution. Later, alone in her quarters, Jane reviewed the transmission again and again. She saw no arrogance in Alice, no cruelty, only certainty. Conviction that chilled her more than any threat ever had. Kevra entered quietly. You heard her, Jane said without turning. She thinks she's saving us. She might be right. Jane looked over sharply. Kevra held up a hand. I don't like it either. But think, in 3 centuries, they built a society without war, without internal division. Their technology is seamless. Their people united. We haven't even fixed the atmosphere on Earth. She also said they'll act whether we agree or not. Kevra didn't answer. Jane looked out the viewport at the glowing planet below. We came here expecting ghosts. Instead, we found gods. No, Kevra said softly. We found ourselves just further down the road. A chime interrupted them. Another transmission. Not from Eos Prime this time, but from Mars High Command. The message was brief. Hold orbit. Await reinforcements. Prepare for containment protocol. Jane cursed under her breath. They're going to provoke them, Kevra said. No, she replied. They're going to try and cage something they don't understand. She shut off the comms and looked down again. Below, the lights of Eos moved with eerie precision, as if the entire planet had just taken a breath. And somewhere inside that breath, the future waited. Alice Mara stood beneath the dome of light, her fingers clasped behind her back, gazing at the simulation of Earth rotating in midair. The continents flickered under layers of real-time data. Political unrest, famine zones, digital propaganda wars. Her face remained unreadable. They still believe chaos is freedom, she murmured. Behind her, Lyran Vale, military strategist of Eos and her oldest confidant, stepped forward, his voice low and precise. They had centuries to perfect their disarray. It's cultural now. Weaponized dysfunction. They call it democracy, she replied, not unkindly. Lyran didn't laugh. And still, their systems rot from within. Our projections are clear. Within 60 years, Earth's biosphere collapses without intervention. Their largest orbital habitat is days from a reactor breach. And 2 colonies have begun open resource conflict, which they will claim are isolated events. Until the collapse is too large to hide. Alice turned from the hologram. The first directive was never to conquer. No, Lyran said, but neither was it to remain silent. In the silence that followed, the atmosphere in the room subtly shifted. Bioreactor walls dimmed slightly as they sensed the gravity of the conversation, and in the shadows, unseen machines adjusted, listening. Always listening. Centuries ago, survival had demanded a different kind of evolution. The early generations of Eos had buried their dead beneath sterile sands, rationed air by merit, and grafted learning algorithms into their children's minds. What emerged was not merely a society, but a consciousness. The Eosian people were individuals, but linked in purpose, their cultural DNA rewritten by hardship and the slow, unrelenting pressure of survival. Alice remembered the stories. Her great-grandmother had led the genome adaptation program, rewriting immunity thresholds and metabolic efficiency across the first engineered generation. Emotion wasn't suppressed. It was refined. Fear was recoded into risk assessment, love into loyalty, and power? Power was obligation. In their philosophy, inherited from centuries of isolation and reshaped values, leadership was not granted, it was grown, selected from infancy, evaluated across life, filtered by test after test of intellect, empathy, and foresight. Alice had passed all of them. She carried the burden as a sacred oath. So when the signal from Earth's observation vessel came, a trembling hello from the void, she did not hesitate to respond. The time had come. Down in the substrata of Eos Prime, far below the gleaming towers and orbital docks, the Citadel mind pulsed. It was not a god nor a ruler, but an emergent neural lattice, a symbiosis of stored human cognition, an adaptive algorithm. It had no name, only function, to preserve the Eosian way. Alice descended alone. The chamber was vast, echoing. Thin columns of synthetic nerve light laced the air. She approached the core without hesitation. "I seek counsel," she said. A shimmer passed across the room, and the mind responded, not with words, but memories. Hers. Earth, as it had been when her ancestors left. Sky filled with advertisements. Ocean swallowing cities. Children born into debt. Then visions of the halcyon venture, of Commander Jane and the hesitation in her voice. Of Earth's leaders already mobilizing, interpreting a greeting as a threat. "You see it too," Alice said. "They are not ready." A pulse of acknowledgement rippled through the chamber. "Then we begin." Across the orbital grid, dormant systems came to life. Not weapons, not yet. Observers, emissaries, data threads woven into the quiet infrastructure of humanity's edge. They would infiltrate gently, supply networks, communication relays, educational feeds. Not to destroy, but to reshape. Influence was more powerful than force. At least for now. In orbit above Jupiter's outer moon, Ganymede Station buzzed with quiet panic. "Encryption's been broken," said Commander Jane, eyes fixed on the shifting screen. "Our fleet data was intercepted and mirrored. Every classified deployment we've sent in the last 24 hours is compromised." Kevra looked pale. "They said they wouldn't attack." "They haven't. This isn't war. It's warning. Or a demonstration," he said grimly. Jane crossed her arms, breathing slow and steady. "They want us to know exactly how outmatched we are, and they haven't even moved a ship." Behind them, Earth's colonial command fed new orders through secure channels. Reinforce border colonies. Bolster cyber defense. Initiate planetary shield trials. And quietly, preparation for a new class of AI-piloted dreadnoughts, just in case. Jane didn't know whether to be furious or afraid. She replayed Alice's final words before the link severed. "If you value what remains, prepare to listen. The old order has failed. We offer more than survival. We offer continuity." On Eos Prime, Lyran stood in the Hall of Progenitors, beneath the towering displays of those who had rebuilt civilization with broken tools and stubborn dreams. Children passed silently between glass columns, listening to guided AI curators recite the lessons of rebirth. This was how every Eosian was raised. From the age of 4, immersed in memory, molded by mission, they were taught that Earth was their birthplace, but not their future. Still, Lyran wondered what Alice had not said aloud. He found her again in the observation ring, watching the stars flick past. "Do you believe they'll resist?" he asked. Alice didn't look away. "They already are. They'll rally, launch countermeasures. Some colonies may align with us, but Earth itself, its leaders will never submit." "I know," she said quietly. "Then what's the plan?" She turned. "We isolate a system, one with strategic importance. Not through force, yet we show what our order can create. Stability, efficiency, security. We make it undeniable. And if they strike back..." Her gaze was steady. "Then we respond, but not before." She walked away, her words hanging like a drawn blade. Lyran remained at the viewport, watching as one of Eos's long-range relay ships faded into the dark. Its mission was simple: reach the Kestrel Verge, a resource-rich system near human trade lanes, and begin subtle integration. No violence, just influence, Conversion by demonstration. If it worked, it would become the first node of the new age. If not, what would follow? On Mars, Kevra stared at the screen alone. The EOCN data packet had been scrubbed and triple firewalled, but he had a copy buried deep, encrypted under a personal cipher. He shouldn't have kept it, but he couldn't let it go. He played it again. A classroom. Children learning through neural infusion, laughing as data fed directly into their thoughts. No hunger, no violence, no waste. And Alice's voice recorded from a previous call. This is not domination. This is ascension. Kevra sat back, breathing shallow. He didn't know if he feared her or admired her. Eos Prime moved in silence, rotating beneath its lattice of satellites. From its surface, Earth looked like a fading light, bright but burning out. And for the first time in centuries, humanity stood on the edge of a new kind of reckoning, not of extinction, but of inheritance. The Kestrel Verge pulsed with quiet energy. 5 planets orbiting a blue giant, veiled in thick gas clouds and mineral-rich belts. Once dismissed as economically unviable, it now held the most critical battleground in a war not yet declared. Eos Prime had moved first. They hadn't sent warships. Instead, sleek integration vessels entered orbit, deploying atmospheric stabilizers and gravity anchors. Within days, satellites blinked to life, reactivating old human beacons. A once-deserted mining colony, Calidus Station, glowed anew with light, structure, purpose. Commander Elsira Jane stared at the update from her command chair aboard Halcyon Venture, the footage grainy from long-distance encryption hops. They rebuilt it in under 30 hours, she said. That station's been dormant for over a century. Kevra leaned over her shoulder. They didn't rebuild it. They reimagined it. Jane didn't respond. She magnified the image. The habitat domes were no longer standard composite. They pulsed faintly, alive with bioreactive sheen. Solar relays spiraled like flowers around the central spire. Human settlers were already moving in voluntarily. Freelancers, fringe scientists, even some former colony governors. People desperate for stability, for advancement, for hope. They're not invading, Kevra murmured. They're offering a better alternative. Jane straightened, her voice cold. And in doing so, erasing everything we built. Everything that's already collapsing, Kevra replied. Before she could answer, a priority transmission cut through the silence. Mars High Command. The Chancellor's voice filled the room, calm, precise, and hollow. Operation Emberlight is approved. You are to proceed to Kestrel Verge with Dreadnought Unity and enact containment. Use non-lethal force where possible. But if EOCN resistance compromises strategic infrastructure, eliminate it. Jane's stomach turned. They want a spectacle, she said. A message to make Earth feel in control again. Kevra looked pale. We'll be provoking the only civilization that's evolved beyond war. We'll be sparking the very conflict they claim to prevent. On Calidus Station, first speaker Alice Mara stepped barefoot onto a viewing platform, her feet making no sound against the smooth synth glass. The settlement below buzzed with quiet activity. Children of Earth and Eos alike walked under shared suns. No walls, no weapons, no orders barked. She inhaled deeply. The air was clean. Real. Lyran Vale approached, his tone urgent but measured. Intercept confirmed. Halcyon Venture and the Unity Dreadnought arrived within 36 hours. Tactical scan shows pulse cannon arrays hot. Drones in deployment sequence. Alice closed her eyes. They are afraid. They'll open with crowd suppression. Try to retake the station symbolically. If we respond violently, they justify escalation. If we yield, they claim victory. There's a third path. Lyran frowned. Diplomacy? They've passed that threshold. No. Witnessing. She turned to him fully. Let them see what we built. Let them look their fear in the face and find no enemy. Hours later, Jane's ship dropped out of warp at the edge of the verge. The Unity loomed beside it, a monolith of steel and thunder. Jane watched the feed from Calidus, expecting silence or perhaps defiance. Instead, she saw an open port, a welcoming beacon. Children playing in the dust beside Eosian guardians. Human settlers, working in tandem with the colony's bioengineers. No armed patrols. No fortifications. The visuals flickered as a transmission opened live, unencrypted. Alice stood calmly on the screen, behind her the entire colony visible in panoramic clarity. "You are welcome here, Commander Jane," she said, "as is Earth, but we will not kneel." Jane clenched her jaw. "You're occupying a frontier colony without sanction. We restored it, we healed it, and we share it. We ask nothing in return but cooperation. You're destabilizing the sector." "No, Commander. We are stabilizing it where your systems failed." Behind Jane, the Unity's captain spoke through the comms. "Target locks acquired. Awaiting your signal." Jane stared at the screen. She saw no anger in Alice. No threat, only disappointment. And perhaps resolve. "We have orders," she said. "Then disobey them." The words were soft, not a command, a plea. For a moment, Jane felt the weight of history on her chest. 3 centuries of silence, of absence, of failed governance. She saw in Alice not a tyrant, but a mirror, a version of humanity forged under impossible strain, now standing not with fists, but with outstretched hands. Then the Unity's captain repeated, colder, "Orders, Commander?" Jane turned off the comms. "Hold fire." Kevra blinked. "What?" "We're not starting this war today." She opened a private channel to Mars. "Tell the Chancellor this isn't a war zone. It's a chance." In the silence that followed, no weapons fired. Instead, Kevra stepped foot onto Calidus Station, flanked by Jane and a diplomatic escort. They were received not by soldiers, but by citizens, both Earthborn and Eosian, working side by side. A young girl tugged Kevra's sleeve, offering him a glowing piece of fruit grown in synthesized soil. He took it, dazed. Alice waited by the central spire, where vines of data pulsed around her like veins of light. "You hesitated," she said to Jane. "I chose," Jane replied. Alice nodded. "Then so will others. Let them come. Let them see, not what they fear, but what they might become." And across the stars, the message began to spread, broadcast not through conquest, but through example. A lost colony, once thought dead, now quietly claiming the future, not with warships, but with wisdom. And Earth, once the cradle of humanity, now faced a question it had never truly asked. What if the children it had lost had outgrown it? And what if they had come not to conquer, but to save? The broadcast from Calidus Station rippled outward. Through every comm relay, pirate feed, an encrypted channel the fringe worlds could access. It wasn't propaganda. It didn't need to be. Footage of terraformed ground flourishing, of disease-resistant crops harvested by both Eosian and Earthborn hands, of children learning not war, but synthesis. The images bled through firewalls and information filters like water through cracked stone. On Earth, it caused fractures. The assembly convened an emergency session, their holograms flickering over a cracked marble floor in the oldest hall still functional. Debates erupted, sharp and divisive. Some saw the Eosians as saviors. Others, as a virus control, disguised as salvation. "They've hacked 3 major defense satellites." Chancellor Ray shouted above the din. "They can rewrite our security grids with a whisper. If we don't act decisively, they'll erode our infrastructure from within." "They haven't attacked," Minister Lyra countered. "They've offered support, blueprints for clean energy, even vaccine strains. No demands. No coercion. They don't need to demand. They're being invited in." Ray slammed a fist against the console. "This is ideological warfare. They're replacing us subtly, systemically." Across the chamber, Kevra's father, Marshal Hayden Corrin, watched without speaking. He had survived 2 planetary collapses and negotiated ceasefires between warring orbital states. Now he said only this: "They're winning because they're what we should have become." The silence that followed was heavier than the arguments that came before. In orbit around Eos Prime, Jane stood aboard the Halcyon Venture, watching the Kestrel data feeds as more Earth settlers arrived, scientists, engineers, young families. The tide was turning. not in fire, but in faith. Kevra joined her on the command deck, a tablet in hand. 10 more governors requested EOCN partnership agreements. 3 of them voted against us last month. Jane nodded, but her eyes remained on the stars. And Earth. Panic mode. Command has deployed new rhetoric. Bioseduction, cognitive encroachment, even ideological decay. They're trying to reframe peace as invasion. And is it? Kevra didn't answer immediately. If being offered a better future is an attack, maybe we deserve to lose. She turned to him, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. You always did think like an anthropologist. Maybe I just learned to listen. Behind them, a soft chime, an incoming message. From Alice. Jane accepted the transmission, and the first speaker's image bloomed in the air. You've seen what's coming, Alice said calmly. Earth cannot hold the line, not against us, but more importantly, not against itself. I know, Jane said. I've known for a long time. Alice's gaze was steady. Then join us, openly. Jane hesitated. You're asking me to break from the chain of command, to abandon Earth. No, I'm asking you to lead Earth differently, not with orders, with example. Kevra stepped forward. If she does this, the Assembly will brand her a traitor. They will, Alice agreed, until the people demand otherwise. Jane said nothing for a long moment. Then, what's the next step? Alice's reply was quiet. You seed the flame that burns away the old world, and you do it not with war but with clarity. Lear and Vale met Alice at the edge of the EOCN archive, where memory lived in lattice and light. Together, they walked through corridors filled with encoded history. Every failed harvest, every breakthrough, every loss etched in pattern. You believe she will break from Earth's command? He asked. I believe she already has. You're counting on a rebellion of thought, not soldiers. That's how we survived. That's how we spread. And if Earth strikes before the shift is complete, Alice touched the glowing archive wall. Then we endure, like always. Lear nodded. And after, Alice turned. Then we build again. It began with whispers, then transmissions, then action. Jane made her first public address not to the Assembly, but to Earth's fractured colonies, broadcast via anonymous channels and mirrored on EOCN links. She did not call for revolution. She asked for reason. Ask yourself what you fear, she said. Is it loss of control or loss of illusion? She did not attack Earth's leaders. She simply asked questions. Why had Earth's oceans not been cleaned? Why were energy crises still manufactured? Why were billions hungry while food decayed in vaults? She offered no answers. She offered a mirror. And Earth cracked. Protests ignited, not from mobs, but from workers, educators, young minds tired of being ruled by entropy. EOCN methods began appearing in fringe academies, in rogue medbays, in reprogrammed civic bots. The change wasn't seismic. It was viral. The Assembly banned all interaction with EO space systems. Within days, several planetary nodes declared autonomy. Back on Calidus Station, Kevra watched the data cascade across the projection wall. His hands trembled. The rate of ideological adoption had exceeded even EOCN forecasts. It wasn't a conversion. It was a remembering. They were never afraid of losing control, he said aloud. They were afraid people would stop believing they needed it. Jane entered, her face unreadable. We received confirmation. The Assembly has issued a warrant for my arrest. Kevra looked at her, horror rising. Are you? No, she said. I'm staying, and I'm making it official. He stepped closer. You understand what that means, right? You'll never go back. Jane held his gaze. I don't intend to. He hesitated, then nodded. Then neither will I. Outside the station, another EOCN vessel arrived, carrying engineers, terror artists, and diplomats, not soldiers. Inside, Jane stepped into a small chamber pulsing with biosynthetic light. Alice was already waiting, beside a low table adorned with EOCN sigils. They faced one another. Alice spoke first. Leadership on EOS is not inherited. It is not seized. It is proven. Jane nodded. Then, test me. The chamber brightened, sensors activating, not to examine her knowledge, but her intent, and in the stillness that followed, Alice extended a hand, not as ruler, but as equal, and Jane took it. Months passed. EOCN principles continued to spread, slowly overtaking the decaying systems of Earth's outdated governance. Some resisted, a few fought, but most adapted, quietly, inevitably. The first directive had never been conquest. It had been restoration. But not of what was, of what could be. And among the stars, the lost children of Earth began leading their origin world not by force, but by returning with what they had forgotten: purpose, clarity, unity. The war never came, because the world that would have fought it no longer existed.